What is up, guys? TopTierYugioh here, and today I've got a White Forest combo guide and test hand video with the Kashtira Fiendsmith White Forest deck that I profiled on the channel already. And as you can see, this is a very long video because I wanted to go in depth here to show you two things. First of all, how powerful and consistent this deck is, and second, how well it plays through hand traps, because that's extremely relevant in today's format. And so this video will be broken up into two halves. In the first half, which is basically the first hour, it's all combos and test hands to demonstrate how the deck works, how it functions, and how consistent it is. Just basically showing you guys the plays. Then in the second half of the video, we'll be putting that to the test by playing through hand traps in what I think is a pretty interesting way. And so definitely stay tuned for that. Now, because this video is so long, I'll be sure to break it up into chapters so you'll be able to see exactly what the combos are, and you can skip to whatever you want to see. Go back and watch them again, do what you gotta do, but make sure you do so after liking the video and subscribing to the channel, and if you want, hitting that notification bell, because this video was a lot of work and your support helps me keep this channel going. But with that being said, let's get into it. So this would be an insane going second hand, obviously, with two Veilers and Nib. That is like nuts. And then our sixth card would be Druisworm, which isn't a horrible sixth card for sure. But going first, the obvious play is with Engraver plus Planet. This is a really good combo as well. And this is going to be a good opportunity to show you guys how you can bridge to the White Forest archetype, because naturally you can't. Like, this doesn't look like a White Forest combo, but because the Fiendsmith engine gives you access to Beatrice and all of the White Forest monsters have graveyard effects, this effectively is a White Forest combo. So the way it's going to start is with Planet. I'm going to put the field spells down here instead of any normal field spell zone just so you guys can see it. But we will go Pressure Planet for Unicorn, summon out the Unicorn. Unicorn effect will get us Birth. The other cool thing about this combo is you get to see how many spells and traps that both of these engines generate. So as you can see, Planet on its own is 2 spells, and then if you use Birth, you're going to have Unicorn, then Reviving Unicorn, so 2 monsters. The Fiendsmith engine is really similar because with the Fiendsmiths, you get Requiem to equip as a spell, and you have Sequence to equip as a spell. So you also have 2 spells, and then way more monsters with Engraver's effect. So both engines give you access to multiple spells and multiple monsters, which is very, very useful for a lot of your combos. You don't have to play Birth right now, but I'm just putting it on the board. It doesn't hurt to play it. Your opponent knows you have it, but nonetheless, Engraver effect. I'm going to try to go through this pretty quickly because we all know what the Fiendsmith cards do at this point. So Engraver for Tract, activate Tract. Search Lurrie, discard Lurrie, Lurrie effect to summon itself, put Lurrie on board. Boom. Now you got a couple of options here. Now, this would be enough to just go into a Fiendsmith play on its own, but if you want to get more Fiends for a better follow-up, you could go Lurrie into... Oops. Okay, we got to move some stuff around. I'm trying to make sure everything fits in the frame here. This is extra monster zone, but... let's see. Zones don't actually matter. Alright, yeah. There we go. So, Requiem effect. The weird thing about this is it does play into Ash Blossom a lot. If you do it like this, you could also just link away the Requiem. That would be fine too. Straight up in the sequence, because that would give you the 3 light fiends you want in graveyard. So it, you know, just depends on what you want to play around. If your opponent did have Ash, they probably would have used it. But again, we'll talk about hand traps at a later point. These are just going to be the ideal versions of the combo. So, Requiem into... we dropped the card. There we go. Requiem into another Engraver. And now we can go into... we can link these away now. So, link these into our copy of Sequence. Activate Sequence's effect, shuffle back. We can do Requiem. Nah, we didn't use Requiem's effect yet, so we'll go with Engraver and Lurrie. Shuffle those back. Go into Lacrima. Let's leave the Beatrice out. We'll go to that. But Lacrima effect, revive Engraver. overlay both of these for Beatrice effect, detach Engraver, and then we'll dump Astellar to the graveyard. So now, here's the interesting part. Also, I do want to note, so we've done a lot of summoning, right? We've done a lot of summoning, but we haven't used Birth yet. We haven't used Engraver effect. We haven't normal summoned. So if our opponent had like Nib or any other hand traps, and our hand was a little bit different, obviously, if we didn't have a bunch of hand traps here, but if we had like a Stellar in hand, Sylvie in hand, something like that, we could keep extending through multiple hand traps with a hand like this. That's one of the crazy things about this combo and about these engines. They don't require your normal summon. So for a normal summon reliant deck like this, that's a very, very cool asset to have. But to continue this play, we will go Barricade Borg Blocker. Oh, I guess we should have kept this in hand. That's the other thing to think about with this play, is you need a spell or a trap in hand to discard for the effect. So you don't want to play the Birth. You don't need to use it yet, but you definitely need something to discard for the effect. So we'll go Barricade Borg Blocker effect, discard the Birth. That would trigger the Astellar. Astellar comes back. And now from here we can just keep playing. So we can use a Astellar effect, send Birth, go into our Sylvie effect. You want to search Tails here because we're going to need to actually resolve the effect a couple of times. Like both, ooh, 3 purges in a row, that's crazy. But, oh, where's Sylvie? But yeah, we're going to go Sylvie into, oh, we already have it on board. Okay, yeah, we're looking for Tails. I got carried away yapping. But, Tails, there we go. So we're searching for our copy of Tails. Keep it in hand for now. Synchro these into Arceella. Didn't realize that the Barricade Borg Blocker was kind of out of frame, but Arceella effect. Discard the Tails. Search for Woes. Tails effect to reset. Activate the Tails. Tails will search for Elzette. And then activate Elzette effect, sending Woes to the graveyard. Special, search Rusia. There it is. Trying to go through like the stuff we all know pretty quickly so this video isn't too long. The main point is just to show you guys the play. So this is our hand now. We've got Rusia, Nib, Double Veiler, Woes effect to reset. And then now we can synchro into Diabell. Diabell effect on summon. We can get back the Tails for more efficiency. We're going to get the Birth or the Planet back from the Barricade Borg Blocker in the end phase anyway, so that doesn't matter. We can get Tract back if we want to follow up with this on next turn. That's actually a decent option. I do that every now and then. But Tails I do like because we need more cards to actually use for Diabell's effect and for other cards. Even though we're going to get like Birth back at the end phase, we don't want to use Birth for that effect. So Tails is a pretty safe choice. But again, Tract is always nice for, you know, follow up. So now this is the hand. Now from here what we can do is special the Rusia. And then we were just looking at the grave, but if you look at the spells and traps in grave, we now have 3. So we can go link these into, one of them is a spellcaster. So we can go Selene effect, gain 3 counters, lose 3 counters, bring back any of your spellcasters. We have infinite spellcaster options here. Bring back any of them, and then go Appaloosa. And so now we've got Appaloosa, Diabell, Woes. We have Tails in hand, and then our graveyard is loaded. We have Rusia plus Sylvie. We have a synchro that we can use for their effects to summon back. We have a Stellar plus Elzette. Both of those are going to be coming back. Then in the end phase, Barricade Borg Blocker resolves. We can add back Birth, which on the next turn we can revive the Unicorn with. We also did not use Engraver's effect or Sequence or Requiem's effect. So on the next turn we have so much follow-up. It's actually crazy. So for our opponent, right, this is what the opponent has to play through. Appaloosa with two negates. They have Woes, Diabel and Tails, Double Veiler Nib. Like, that's nuts. So like your opponent will do something, like let's say they burn through your Appaloosa counters, sure. They do something, activate Diabel effect, you send Tails summon out Silvera, Book of Eclipse their whole board. Then Tails will reset itself. They summon some more monsters, sure. They can extend through it because let's say you're playing Snake Eyes or Yubel and they've always got the extender. Well, it's still not going to be enough because then you activate Woes and then, let's see, shuffle this, or chain Sylvia Rucia, shuffle back Silvera, summon out. Then you summon out one of your non-tuners, so let's say Elzette or Astellar. I'd go for Elzette just to get more copies in the graveyard in case something happens. And you can always get more Stellars with Elzette. And then at the resolution, you synchro again. You summon out Silvera again, you book their board again. Then you can also, since you summoned the tuner, add back Elzette to your hand. So you have play for next turn. And so your opponent has to play through like all of this. Something else we could have done is when we resolved Diabel effect, we could have revived the Astellar then as well. So we have even more bodies on board, just so our opponent can like push through. And if this stays on board, you can use the effect next turn as well. But let's say we go to next turn, we don't even need the draw. You can go Birth, Revive Unicorn. Like, this is just so many plays just off of that one combo. That's the one thing I like about this deck. There's so much follow-up. Again, we still have the Engraver in graveyard, plus multiple Light Fiends. You might note that we didn't use Lacrima's effect on that last turn. The reason for that was because I'd rather have better follow-up than to burn the opponent for 1200. And so keeping like the extra sequence and Requiem Engraver, it's actually really, really good because it gives you 2 spells that you can send off of your effects if you need to on the follow-up turn. But yeah, Engraver plus Planet is really, really good. May not seem like a White Forest combo, but with Beatrice and Barricade Board Blocker, it certainly is. And again, I am going to put in the chapters what the combo is so you guys can see it. Hopefully this gives you guys a more realistic view of the deck, for sure. Alright, so this hand we have Druid Worm, Astellar, Terraforming, Ash Blossom, and Nibiru. So going first is a really good hand because we have Astellar plus Planet, which is insane. One of the best combos in the entire deck. Going second, this is also really good because we have 3 hand traps. Now, the tricky thing here is that there is a little bit of a conflict between the Druid Worm and the Planet, which is a Kashtira card, obviously, because if we have Druid Worm on board, we won't be able to summon our Kashtira monsters. That can be a little bit tricky, but sometimes your opponent will clear the Druid Worm, and that kind of helps. Like, they don't know that the extra resources they put into clearing the Druid Worm and dealing with the effect actually helps us because it clears the board for Kashtira cards later on. But again, obviously we're going to be looking at going first for this, so we're going to start with the Terraforming. Get your copy of Planet, activate Planet. Planet's going to get us Unicorn. There it is, Unicorn. Summon out the Unicorn. Unicorn get Birth. Now we can normal summon out the Astellar. Activate the Astellar effect, sending the Planet to summon out a copy of Sylvie. Sylvie effect, we can go for either Tails or Rose. In this case, it doesn't necessarily matter. I guess it does depend on how you want to play this out. So we can do a play that will allow you to send any spell or trap in the deck to the graveyard and add it back. If you're doing that, you want to search Tails. If you're not doing that, you just want to do like a standard play, then I think Woes is a better choice. But obviously, searching Woes, the only difference is that it kind of plays around Droll a little bit better. But if our opponent had Droll, they would have cooked us like earlier, so it doesn't really matter. So we can go Tails. So then from here, both of these into the Arciella. Arciella effect, discard the Tails, search for Woes. Now in new chain we'll have chainlink 1, Astellar, chainlink 2, Tails to reset. So Tails to reset. Astellar back on board. So now, debating how I want to show you guys this. Like, I don't remember if in the deck profile I showed you guys to play to send any spell or trap to the grave. I don't remember if I showed you guys that or not. But the way it would effectively work is you just like, you would activate Tails, go for Elzette, summon out Elzette, and then Elzette plus Unicorn would be Fiendsmith play. Fiendsmith stuff make Beatrice, Beatrice dump a spell or trap, then this makes Diabell, Diabell add back the spell or trap. That's like effectively the way it works. But I don't remember if I showed you guys that in that video. I think I did, but nonetheless, if I were just making a standard play or if it's game 1, if it's game 1, I don't necessarily think it's like worth it really. Like I'd rather keep the Unicorn on the board like for the entire play, you know, just to show you guys, why not? Yeah. So activate Tails. Tails can search for Elzette. The other downside to this play is you have to use the Tails pretty early and you're not adding it back, so then you lose like the efficiency that you would have by having Tails in rotation, but you gain the power of like any spell or trap in your deck, which is pretty good. So then from here what we can do is activate Elzette effect, sending the woes to the graveyard, summon out Elzette, search Rusia, and then now both of these can go Moon into Requiem, Requiem into Engraver. Now we can special summon out the Rusia and Engraver into sequence. And then sequence effect. Let's get all of our light fiends together. We do have the 3, so we'll shuffle back the 2 links. Summon out Lacrima effect for Engraver. This is when we get cooked by Nib, but even if we do, we haven't used Engraver, we haven't used Birth, and then we haven't used Rusia or Sylvie's graveyard effects. So we still would be able to play through Nib very, very easily, but assuming at this point they don't have it, we make Beatrice effect, and we can dump a couple of different things. Oh, well, they're right here, but we have Purge, Imperm. If it's a game 2 or 3, you can be sending like Secret Village, Skill Drain, Anti-Spell, whatever floodgates you want. Sometimes I actually like getting Cross Out, just for like greedy opponents who try to like nib you later, and Cross Out is always like negate Engraver, like, or negate Lurrie or something on your opponent's turn. So it's like a good defense card, but also like can protect you from just getting destroyed. But again, we can play through it pretty easily. But depending on the matchup, these are fine. Because we also have, did I forget to reset woes? Yeah, woes should be on board. But we would also have woes. So like searching Purge, you would have the full like setup with it if you sequence it correctly. So you could use woes. Woes goes to the graveyard, then you purge your opponent, and you get the full effect for Purge. Or you can just send Imperm, which is pretty safe. Then you don't have to worry about how you sequence your stuff. But yeah, so that would be the play. Misplaying all day, but yeah, the woes should definitely be on the board. But then from here, you go into Diabell, then Diabell can add back whatever you sent. So add back that. And now we want to turn this into an Appaloosa. And you have a couple of ways to do it. You have Birth that you could use, or you have Rusia / Sylvie's effect, which you can use. Either one of them works, to be honest. Sometimes I do like to keep a Synchro Engraver so that you can kind of summon something back on your opponent's turn. But you also, it would be nice to have like Birth plus Unicorn left, because that's just hard for a lot of decks to deal with. Like that's just good. So I feel like that's sometimes the play. So we can do it like that. We can activate Rusia's effect Engrave, shuffle back the Arciella, summon back Rusia, and then these 3 can become Appaloosa for some monster negates, and then Birth, Revive back, Unicorn. This is in the extra monster zone, obviously, and then we can set the imperm. Okay, trying to fit everything in, but this is a lot. So this would be the inboard basically. We'd have Appaloosa with three material Appaloosa. We have Diabel. We have Unicorn plus Birth. So you're not playing Fiendsmith cards in this board. This just cooks Fiendsmith cards. We have Imperm plus Woes, which is pretty nice. And then remember, in the hand we had Ash Nib Druis Worm, which is actually kind of nuts. In the graveyard we have both Sylvie and Elzette. We have Sylvie plus Rucia. Then we have Elzette plus Astellar. We have Engraver plus Sequence and something to shuffle back for it. So we have, this is a lot. You just win. If your opponent had no hand traps for this hand, you win. The game's over. There's nothing, not even that much to say here. There's infinite recursion, infinite disruption. Yeah. Yeah, Stellar plus planets, actually kind of nuts. And again, we could have done this differently if we didn't want to send like something in particular to the graveyard. We could have just made Diabel earlier, played around hand traps better. There are plenty of plays that you can make, but that was like the greedy way to do it. And even the greedy way of doing it, you still can like play around multiple hand traps. We still didn't use like all of our extenders that we had. So really, really good play, really good hand there. Those are the type of hands where like, you know, you can't lose. You can't lose with hands like that. Let's see this next one. And have we drawn Engraver every hand? But Engraver, Astellar, Rucia, Tract, and Tales. So if we're going second, we get destroyed because we don't have any hand traps. But our sixth card would be Elzette, so at least more extension. Going first is an interesting hand because we have Engraver plus Tract, and then we have like 3 different White Forest cards. So it's interesting. We could use Tract to go straight into like an Appaloosa and then normal summon a Stellar, and then a Stellar plus Tails is combo. And then if the opponent has like, let's say Imperm for something, like the Astellar in particular, we could just still extend with the Rucia, which is pretty nice. The other thing I just realized is there are 3 different QCRs in this hand. Man, weird. But yeah, I think that's actually the play. You just go for Tract and just use this to bait out your hand traps before going into the more costly play. But the other thing is we have to generate a lot of disruption off of this. That's the thing. So Tract, get Lurrie, discard Lurrie, summon Lurrie, Lurrie into Engraver, Lurrie into Requiem into Engraver. Just trying to speed this up a little bit. Requiem. Alright, so Engraver on board here. Now from here we can, I guess actually, because we had Engraver plus Tract in hand, we don't have a way to get a third Light Fiend in the graveyard, and that's actually a little bit problematic because if you had the third Fiend, what you would do is like you make Necroquip, and then this would go in the grave, this shuffle back, and then summon itself out, and then Necroquip plus Engraver is, you know, whatever you want it to be. But in this case, if we use Engraver's effect and shuffle back one of these, once we go into sequence, we would only have 2 Light Fiends in the graveyard, which would mean that there's really nothing we can summon. So that doesn't really do anything. So this is actually unfortunate, drawing Engraver plus Tract, but it still does test for a couple of hand traps. It still does test for Ash Blossom. It still does test for Droll. So if you get this far, you know your opponent doesn't have at least an Ash. And if your opponent has like an effect negation, Imperm Veiler, you know, it wouldn't be horrible. So at this point, you would have to go a Stellar effect, a Stellar, discard the Tails. And again, if the opponent has effect negation, it would be fine because we still have Rucia to extend with, and this would still be like the extra body that we need to just go into sequence. So like, it would be completely fine if the opponent had disruption here. But if they don't, then we go Sylvie, new chain. Let's do this properly. So new chain, it'll be, we can do Sylvie 1, Tails 2. So Tails to reset, Sylvie search for woes, then again, we could still go for our Fiendsmith line if we'd like. If we want to do that, we could just link these off, and then we still have like the Rusia and stuff to extend, which I actually like. Let's go for it like that. So these can go sequence, and then we can use sequence effect, shuffle back the Lurrie and Requiem. Go Lacrima, Lacrima effect, bring back the Engraver. These can be Appaloosa. And again, no Lacrima effect, so that we have optimal follow-up, this turn or next turn. Then from here, special Rusia. Rusia into, or Rusia and the Astellar and the Arciella. Arciella effect, discard the woes. And here, since we already have both of our spells or traps, we can just go into a Veiler. For extra monster negation on top of the Appaloosa, new chain will have 1 Astellar, 2 woes, so woes to reset, Astellar summon back. And here we could use Tales just for a free search, or we could use the Debo that we're about to summon to add back Tract, and Lurrie is back in our deck, so that wouldn't be horrible, to be honest. So I kind of like that, because I feel like going for Elzette at this point doesn't really do anything except for like get Elzette into rotation, because it's like, what do you send for Elzette's effect? You don't want to send either one of these. And then like you also, like, you've already gone through like Rusia and Sylvie, so it's like, what are you searching with Elzette? Like, there's no real point to searching for Elzette, so I don't really want to have to use this right now. So it would be better just to go Diabel, add back the Tract, so now you have better follow-up next turn. Now we still have Engraver plus Tract in hand, but it's like, this is still like summon out a Light Fiend without your normal summon next turn, which is good. And then we can always get to Elzette through the woes on our opponent's turn. So this will be the end board for that. Pretty efficient play, I would say. So we've got Tails plus woes, Diabel Appaloosa with 3 materials. We have the Veiler, and then we also have full Fiendsmith stuff. We have Rusia plus Sylvie Engrave, we have a Synchro Engrave, and a Stellar Engrave. So we have most of our White Forest follow-up set up, and then we also have Fiendsmith cards in hand. So pretty solid board. This would give us access to double Silvera effect, so double Book of Eclipse through Diabel plus the woes, 3 negates, 4 negates, and then we summon out Elzette with this, obviously. Elzette adds itself back to hand. Astellar can summon itself back to the field. Both of these summon themselves back. Engraver summons itself back. More than enough to OTK next turn if the opponent can't break this board. Alright, let's see. Astellar, Nib, Ash, Lurrie, and Ash. Again, going second, this would be a pretty good hand. 2 hand traps, Ash plus Nib. Going first, this would be most unfortunate, because this is like, pray that the opponent doesn't have any hand traps. So like, both of these, even if we had a spell or trap, both of these would be very costly plays with this hand. Like, if the opponent has anything, then you just kind of like lose. But the obvious play that you would have to make with this hand is just normal summon Lurrie, do Fiendsmith plays, and hope it gets you there. If it does get you there, next turn you just revive Engraver, and then like Engraver will generate the spells that you need for a Stellar. But in this hand you can't do it because these are both normal summons. So this hand is really just normal summon Lurrie, Fiendsmith stuff, pray. You got Ash and Nib for follow-up maybe, but that's rough. Going second, we draw Veiler, so 6 card. This would not help us going second either, really. So unfortunate hand. Not quite a brick, but like, you know, not the best either. This is like one of those 50-50 hands where I feel like the better players can oftentimes turn these into wins, whereas the average player would lose them, and that's the difference between like maybe topping and not topping. Like, I think you have to win the 50-50 hands. Because like, if you think about it, if you go X3, you're out, right? In most cases. your opponent's going to get really lucky one match. You're going to get really unlucky another match. That's already 2 losses. Just luck. So that means you need to win all of the 50-50s in order to do well. So that's kind of the way I look at it. That's a hand to where it's not horrible, but you better win with it. You got to figure out a way to win with it. And hopefully normal summon Lurrie gets you there. Let's see. So this hand's interesting. So going second, we have Nib plus Fenrir, which is pretty solid. 6th card would be a second Crosshell, which doesn't do anything. But going first, having 3 Kashtira cards is not horrible. It's not the worst thing in the world. So the way I would kind of play this out, like this is 2 bodies really at the end of the day. And 2 bodies is Fiendsmiths, and Fiendsmith is White Forest, is the way I see it. The way I would play it out is I would start with Fenrir and then activate Fenrir effect. And this would kind of play around draw a little bit, because if you just do this into planet and they draw you, you're hurt. But if you do this, search for unicorn, they draw you, you still just play birth, summon out the unicorn, and then play around it. So we're starting with this way, but we are going to still use the terraforming later. It's still extra spells. But Fenrir effect. Fenrir. This also baits out spells and baits out effect negation as well, which is pretty good. But Fenrir for unicorn. We'll still terraforming. We'll still get planet. But birth. Summon out unicorn. If this is game 1, the opponent thinks you're on Kashtira for sure. And they're like, oh man, he definitely, they're in their head, they're complaining. They're like, dang, this guy drew crazy. He drew the combo. But like for us, this is like obviously not an insane play at all, but not bad either. But 2 bodies. And again, at this point, they are very confused. They're like, what is going on? Kashtira Fiendsmith, what is happening here? But Moon into Requiem into Engraver. Again, you could do the Necroquip line, but we don't want to really do that here. Instead, we can just use the birth, bring back one of our Kashtira monsters. Then do this into sequence, sequence effect, shuffle back Requiem and Moon into our, where is it, Lacrima, revive Engraver, and that into Beatrice. And dump the Astellar. You guys have seen this play before already in this video, I think the other one too, but again, it's super interesting how much more consistent the Fiendsmith cards make White Forest, because the big problem is that you really only have the Astellars and the Elzettes to get your plays going, but this means you have so many more copies of that, like just any 2 bodies gets your plays going. So discard the planet, Astellar effect, revive, Astellar effect, send the bird since we already used it, and then we also already normal summon set, something to keep in mind as well, but we'll go Sylvie effect. So we've already normal summoned, we've already used the Astellar graveyard effect. That means we have to we have to use Elzette to keep going. So those 2 into Arciella, send Tails, search for woes, Tails to reset, Tails effect, search for Elzette, effect, send woes, search out Rucia, woes effect to reset, go into our copy of Diabel. Interesting choices here. Let's see, so we've got Tails we can add back for efficiency. We can add back Birth or Planet with Barricade Board Blocker at the end of the turn. Terraforming doesn't do anything, so I guess the obvious choice is actually the Tails. So add back the Tails. summon out the Borg blocker, summon out the Rusia. We've got, as you can see, 3 spells in graveyard, so this goes into Selene, add counters, lose counters, summon something back into Appaloosa. So what we'd have to end with, oh, and then in the end phase we add back Birth with the Barricade Borg blocker. So then to end this play, what we've got is Appaloosa with 2 materials, Diabel, Tails. Then in hand we've got Nib, Tails, Birth, Crossout. We can set the Crossout, and Crossout can like negate Engravers and stuff on the opponent's turn, which is always really good against most decks. We've got the Nib, we've got Birth for follow-up. We've got Tails, which we can send from the hand to the grave with Diabel effects, so we've got some efficiency there. We've got Woes for Silvera. So we've got double Silvera, Appaloosa, Nib. In the graveyard we have both Rusia and Sylvia effects. We have both Elzette and Astellar effects. We have Engraver effect. So there is a ton of efficiency. That's one thing I like. I love that about this deck. I love how efficient it is, how good you can play on like the crackback if your opponent can somehow break your board. But yeah, that's the play with just any 2 bodies. It's pretty good. Alright, so this hand, if we're going first, it's just a Stellar plus spell card, which you guys have seen before. You guys get the gist. Going second, we have Druid Worm, Nib, Veiler. So, oh, and Dominus Purge, so 4 hand traps. This is actually kind of nuts. We'd obviously want to hold the Dominus Purge so that we have a spell for a Stellar next turn. But if you had to use it, you could use it. But Nib plus Veiler is already really, really good. Assuming that they're trying to follow up with like Fiendsmith stuff, you have Druid Worm for that as well. So this is actually a very good hand going first or second. 6th card to be called by, so under a spell for a Stellar anyways. Worst case scenario, honestly, you could just play the odds. If you had to use all 4 of these hand traps, you're probably drawing a spell card with this. Or not with this, but like for your next turn. Like it could be Terraforming, it could be Planet, it could be Unicorn, it could be Engraver, like Lurrie. Like there's so many, like on top of the spells and traps that you already play, you have so many other cards that turn into spells and traps that like even just having this on its own is not super scary. But yeah, this would be a nuts hand, but in terms of combos, it's just a Stellar plus spell card. Stellar trap card. No point in showing you guys that again. Alright, so we've got Woes, Engraver, Tract. We keep drawing these 2 together. Elzette and Terraforming. I believe we've already done Engraver plus Planet, which would be pretty much the exact same thing as this, except we wouldn't even have to bridge to our White Forest stuff because we already have Elzette plus like multiple spells here. So like without normal summoning, we could go into like an Appaloosa. Or I guess it would be annoying because we have Engraver plus Tract. Once again, that would be a little bit problematic, but the Planet into the Kashtira cards, the Unicorn Birth, that would give us enough bodies to not really need to worry about it. We can make Appaloosa no normal summon, and then use this to get to a Stellar, and then we'd have more than enough bodies. Normal summon a Stellar, send spells and traps. You guys see the play from here. This is just all gas. Like this hand is infinite gas, but no defense. So if we lost the die roll, then you know this would not be good. Our 6th card would be another Elzette. And I guess even going second, it wouldn't be the worst thing because we could still like Terraforming in the Planet into Fenrir, which is great going second. I mean, this isn't bad going second. Like these are still special summon extenders that your opponent has to stop. Both of these are just so much value. So this wouldn't even be terrible going second, but going first, I think we've seen that play before. We've seen how that goes out, how that plays out. So I really want to show you guys like different hands at this point. Alright. But the deck is just so consistent, you know, that's what your deck is supposed to do, draw the same things. Oh, so this is actually a brick. 4 hand traps, sure. Wombo combo, Purge plus Imperm. But like this is what kills it. I hate this card so much. Like, why do you have to control a spellcaster or illusion to search? Like, this is a horrible searcher. Because you already have to, like, commit to the board, which is likely your normal summon, to even use this. It's just a bad card. Oh, but this... Okay, never mind. We're in there. Going second, this would be kind of not horrible. Hopefully the opponent doesn't stop the Engraver, but, like, going second, you would have 4 hand traps for the opponent, and then you'd have Engraver, which doesn't seem that bad. Let's see if they ash this though. And then you have to go another turn, right? What do we draw? These? Yeah. Let's split these up right now, actually. But yeah, so 4 hand traps and starters, pretty good. It's kind of unfortunate that the way you have to play this format is with so many hand traps in the main deck, but if you don't have, you know, at least 2 hand traps, you probably lose. You probably lose to Snake Eye or U-Bell. And even 2 sometimes isn't enough. Sometimes you really need 3 or 4, which is crazy, but that's just the way the format is right now. Purge once again, Astellar, Tract. If this next card was Engraver, I was about to be like shook. But yeah, this is a solid hand. And again, I think maybe you guys have just seen all the plays at this point, but really, yeah. So this is just Terraforming. We have a hand trap going second. Our 6 card would be Veiler, by the way, but Terraforming for planet for unicorn. Unicorn would get birth. I'm gonna go ahead and just add the birth right now. But the other thing I kind of like about this line is that, let's say your opponent does hand trap something, you punish them with the unicorn. But we can go Tract. Tract, search Lurrie, discard Lurrie. Lurrie into Requiem. Requiem into Engraver. Both of these into Sequentia. Could activate Birth, and then Birth bring back the unicorn. That way if your opponent does want to Veiler this, then like they pay for it. Or you could just keep this engraved for follow-up in case they like having Nibiru. Either way, that's probably the safer play, to be honest. It's less greedy, but you can go Sequence, Shuffle back, Requiem, and Lurrie. Just realized we haven't used like half of the extra deck in this video so far. They're not coming up now in these test times, but they do come up in like real games. But Lacrima, revive Engraver, go into Appaloosa. It's probably why Appaloosa gets banned, to be honest. Like, decks are just making Appaloosa super early in combos, and now you can't hand trap them. It's kind of crazy. But what we can do now is, again, at any point Birth is live, but normal summon Astellar. Stellar effects send planet. If the opponent has been holding an imperm, big brain for them, but we've got the follow-up, so it wouldn't even matter. But a stellar effect, go for Sylvie. Sylvie can get tails or woes, doesn't really matter in this case. And then synchro for Arciella. I just realized you guys can't even see the Appaloosa. But synchro for Arciella. Arciella effect, send the tails, search for woes. Then we'll do Chainlink 1 Astellar, Chainlink 2 Tails. Now let's see, what do we have in the grave that we'd want to add back? Probably the Tract. So we can synchro these away for Diabell. Add back the Tract, which is again great follow-up for next turn. And then we can activate the Birth. Birth can bring back Unicorn. Let's just switch the position so it's more clear. But the zones don't actually matter or anything. Just trying to have everything cleanly shown in video. And we could have used Tails to search for like Elzette, but it doesn't actually matter. Like, I would rather have Tract in hand than this. I mean, we're gonna have this anyways, so I guess I'd rather have Tract than Elzette when I already have Rucia in hand. And we don't even need to summon the Rucia in this case because we've got more than enough gas. So we would just set woes Purge, and then this would be our board to pass on. We would have Unicorn Birth, Appaloosa Diabell, woes Purge, and then in the graveyard we'd have Fiendsmith cards that we haven't even used yet, plus stuff to summon them with. You've got the Sylvie, you've got Astellar, we have a Synchro. So graveyard is set up pretty well for follow-up, and then we again have plays next turn. The Woes is going to summon out Elzette, so Elzette would obviously add itself back to your hand, and so next turn you would have like basically everything. Fiendsmith, White Forest, Kashtira, literally everything in this deck. New hand, Ash, Druid's Worm, Imperm, Terraforming. So going second, this would be good. 6th card would be Lurrie, which not horrible in this case actually. Going first, this would just be normal summon Ash plus Unicorn, 2 bodies into the play we've already seen. Like 2 bodies into Fiendsmith, into White Forest, and then that's honestly the play. Going second, it's also really solid, 3 different hand traps. So I would say this is a decent hand. Our opponent's hand traps would matter. If they have multiple hand traps, we'd be left in a pretty tough spot. But again, just having 3 hand traps on our own is like pretty good. Like worst case, you know, we end with like a live birth and a unicorn plus 3 hand traps. Like I wouldn't be mad at that at all. Again, it's not an auto win hand, but it's like a 50-50 game hand that you can definitely win with. We're going to do a couple ones real quick just to show you guys the consistency. I know somebody commented on the deck profile about the consistency, so just to show you guys really quick. So this hand, we have 3 hand traps, multiple combos. So that's a hand, let's see, Fenrir, Crossout, Double Crossout, Birth, and Lurrie. Not the best hand, but you're obviously not going to draw a Double Crossout very often, but this is at least play. And then, like this is Fiendsmith. And then this is also 2 bodies in the Fiendsmith. So you have multiple lines. You could also just like special the Fenrir, use the effect, normal summon Fenrir, play like that, and then kind of go from there. And then you've got Birth follow up through like something else. Not horrible, but playable at least. The 3rd crossout within like 8 cards is wild. They were just stacked together, I guess. But this hand is also not the best. You have multiple hand traps, but it's really just 2 bodies in the Fiendsmith in the White Forest. Let's see. Are all my White Forest cards just like lumped together? But again, 3 hand traps, Engraver. Maybe I should just shuffle better. Let's see. Yeah, I guess I should just shuffle better. That's weird. Oh my god, all my stuff is just lumped together. But yeah, this is solid hand. We've got 2 hand traps. You've got Called By. Elzette plus Woes is pretty solid combo. It's just basically like Astellar plus any spell or trap is your full combo. Elzette plus 2 spells or traps is full combo. And this is effectively 2 spells or traps, or this can be 2 spells or traps. You can always just add it back with Diabel. Pretty good hand. 2 hand traps, Astellar, Elzette, Engraver. Elzette, Engraver, Planet, 2 hand traps, really good hand. And then 43 cards in the deck, so not a real hand. But as you guys can see, most of these hands are really good. I think the only like unplayable hand was like Triple Planet, Tails and Nib, which is like one of the most unlikely hands in the like entire deck. Like, so this is 3 of a 4 of, which is nuts. And then a 1 of. 3 of a 4 of and a 1 of is not very common. That's not going to happen very often. It's not like something you count against the deck. So I would say most of your hands are playable. This deck does not brick very often. You do have like 50-50 hands where you might, you know, might have 2 hand traps, 2 bodies in the Fiendsmith stuff, but it doesn't like brick, you know? Like hands aren't unplayable most of the time. They're just hands that sometimes you auto win with, and they're hands to where you have to make work somehow. And that's kind of where this deck kind of goes from. Kind of the range from okay to you win. Alright, so now in this portion of the video, I want to show you guys how you can play around hand traps. And I think I have a really interesting way of doing this, but we've seen the combos that this deck can do. We've seen the lines, and obviously this deck is very powerful against an empty board, against no opponent, against no hand traps. You know, in theory, this is a great deck. But I want to show you guys how you can play against real opponents with it, and how this deck is still very, very good, how it still holds up in the real world, in real games. And so the way it's going to work is that we are going to roll dice. We're rolling dice on this, and so I'll use two dice, okay? And if I'll roll one dice actually. We're going on the fly here. That's the thing. If I play this knowing what hand traps the opponent has, it's hard to actually make it real. Like if I say, oh, this is how we play around Nib, then like I'm going into it thinking this is how I play around Nib, but that's not what you do in real life. In real life, you don't know what they have. So that's why I want to use dice to kind of randomize it. And so we're going to roll a dice with every hand. And I'm not going to roll the dice until we get to a point where the opponent could have a hand trap. And if we roll a 1, then they're going to have Ash Blossom. If they have a 2, it's Nib. If it's 3, it's Imperm or Veiler. Imperm. We'll say Imperm because it's better. And then if we roll 4, 5, or 6, then I'll roll a second dice. And then in that case, same thing except on the second dice, same thing. So Ash, Nib, Imperm, but then we'll have, let's say, Droll for 4. No, we'll have Veiler before, Droll for 5, Bestial for 6, because Bestials are pretty common right now as well. I'd say Droll's kind of on the way out, Bestials are coming in, but they're definitely still around. So that's the way we'll do it. We'll roll the first dice on the first kind of choke point, and then if we get 4, 5, or 6, we'll roll the second dice and kind of see where we go from there. And I think it kind of mimics standard statistics as well. If you're playing against 12 hand traps, I believe it's about a 50% chance of having greater than 2 or greater than 1. So that's why I'm kind of doing it this way, because you'll have 50% chance 1 through 3, 50% chance 4, 5, 6. If it's 4, 5, or 6, they've got the 2. So we'll see from there. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully this is kind of like a fair way to do this. If you guys think of a better way, definitely let me know for future videos. But let's go ahead and get into it. Man, it is pouring down. It's like Tropical Storm Debbie right now outside. But all right, first hand. Let's do one more cut for good luck. First hand. Cross out, Purge, Droll, Nib, and all right, well, we've got 4 hand traps and cross out. This is the first unplayable hand of the entire video, actually, but I think. But going first, obviously we got nothing. Going second, we still have nothing. So we're gonna just do this again. All right, here we go. Engraver, Imperm, Elzette, Druis, and still cross out. So the obvious play that we'd have to make here is Engraver, and then use the spells that we generate from Engraver for Elzette. That can get us into our plays. Elzette can also give us the body for our Fiendsmith lines. So this actually works pretty well. So we'll start with Engraver, right? And I think sometimes it is actually correct to Ash Engraver versus ashing the Requiem. This is something I've been kind of thinking about and talking to people about lately, but like, if you ash the first Engraver, then obviously they could have the Tract, they could have the Lurrie, they could summon 2 bodies and go Requiem. So you haven't stopped the Requiem yet, but the problem with stopping Requiem is it still puts multiple things in graveyard. So like, if you stop this, they have no Fiends. If you stop the Requiem, then they would still have Engraver in graveyard, they would still have Lurrie in graveyard, and then Requiem in graveyard. So they could still summon back Engraver, equip it with the Requiem, and then send one of your monsters. Like, that's actually, like, you cannot really, it's rough, it's rough. But we'll see if the opponent has Ash now. So again, if we're gonna roll the first dice, if it's a 1, it's Ash Blossom. And this is a 6, so we'll have to re-roll with 2. So if either one of them is a 1, then they've got the Ash. Oh, okay, so 1 and 4, so that's Ash, and then Ash, Imperm, or sorry, Ash, Nib, Imperm, Veiler. So they have Ash, Veiler. Tricky. I don't know if, let me know in the comment section down below, where are you on like ashing the Engraver versus ashing the Requiem? I feel like ashing the Requiem is more common, so we're gonna play it like that. But if they ashed here, it would obviously be a lot worse for us. That's the tricky thing here. So we're just gonna assume they're gonna ash the Requiem, but we know they don't have Droll at this point. or not that we know, but like they don't. So we activate Engraver, search Tract. We say, you know, anything on resolution. They say nope. Okay, no drill. Cool. Activate Tract. Get Lurrie, discard Lurrie. Lurrie effect. Anything on Lurrie effect? Okay, no. So we know they don't have a, or I guess if they had a Bestial, they couldn't use it yet anyways. So it doesn't tell us they don't have Bestial because we don't have a monster on board. But yeah, so Lurrie effect. Lurrie into Requiem, and then Requiem effect. Then the opponent uses the Ash Blossom, and here we have a decision to make because we do have the cross out in hand. So do we want to cross out this, or do we want to wait for something later? So we still do have effectively Elzette plus spell card, which is a play, and we do still have the live Fiendsmith in graveyard. So we can still play even without this. Or we could stop this and then go into like our Fiendsmith lines and then see from there kind of how they play it out. So we could hold this for like a later nib, or for a later any other hand trap that they may have. And that's sort of the tricky thing about this format. It's like your opponent likely doesn't just have one. So I think I maybe would actually let Ash on Requiem go through because we can still just summon it back anyways. And then I would just hold this for like a later interaction. So they stopped us here. Cool. What we would do here is still shuffle back Lurrie, summon out Engraver with its own effect, and then equip with the Requiem, activate Elzette effect, send the Requiem, summon out, and then search for Astellar. Then from here, also by the way, we have summoned Lurrie, let's see, Lurrie, Requiem, Engraver, Elzette, so 4 summons. And then we also have 2 Light Fiends in the graveyard. We can go sequence, which obviously doesn't seem amazing, but it does give us the Speller Trap that we need to use for the Astellar effect. We could use the Imperm, but again, that's just a little bit risky. So what I would do here is go sequence effect, shuffle back both of these, and actually, shuffle back these with sequence effect, and we bring out the Lacrima. No effect on the Lacrima because we don't have anything that we can use for it, but then we can equip sequence from the field to the Lacrima, normal summon out the Astellar, and then also if the opponent were to stop the sequence effect, that's when we would like cross it out, by the way. So I guess it depends on if the opponent uses it here, or knowing they have the Astellar in hand, they save it for the Astellar, which I guess is probably the case, because like you activate sequence effect, they see only 2 Fiends engraved, and they're like, all right, what are they doing with that? They know we have a Astellar, so I don't think they negate the sequence, but I think they do try to negate this, in which case we would cross it out. It's an Imp or Veiler, so cross out for the Veiler. So you play it through both of the hand traps. Astellar will resolve. Summon out the Sylvie. Let's make some space on the board here. Summon out the Sylvie. Sylvie can search for us Tails. Then we can go Arciella. Arciella effect, discard the Tails to search for Woes. Now in new chain, we can go chain link 1 Astellar, chain link 2 Woes. So Stellar, Woes to reset. Now, something I think is actually interesting here, if this were a game 2 or 3, we could actually summon out the Druid Swarm. Like let's say we're going first game 3, right? We could summon out the Druid Swarm by just banishing one of our lights in grave. We can make Beatrice dump like a secret village or something and then add it back. Isn't that nuts? Like we played through 2 hand traps and could still Beatrice dump, add back any Speller Trap we want to hand. Like that is actually kind of crazy. Yeah, but oh yeah, this is Tails. But then from here, let's see what we've got. So We've already used Elzette. Because it would be nice if we can somehow use the resetting effect of the woes for like some type of free value. So I'm trying to think if there's a way to get to it. There might not. I mean, I guess we could use this for Rusia. Yeah, that's... So again, what I'm thinking about is, first of all, a way to use this to get some value, this resetting effect. But also I'm thinking, what are we going to add back with the Diabo? It could be this for, again, more efficiency. It could be this to negate an opponent's Engraver or Fiendsmith card. It could be Tract for more follow-up. Like, so we have a couple of different options. And Tract is a little bit attractive as well because we don't have an Engraver in graveyard. So this really would improve our follow-up by a lot. Or even, yeah. So a lot of options here. I guess if we have bodies, we get the Fiendsmith cards anyway, so we don't need Tract. So, yeah, we could use Rusia, or use Tails to go for Rusia. The other thing to think about as well is if the opponent has a third hand trap being Nib, but that is something that I'm not necessarily accounting for right now. I don't think you play around 3 hand traps. I mean, you can. If it's like win or lose, if the opponent has a third hand trap, then like maybe they just got it. But I guess even if they did hand trap us here, we could still Druid Swarm. Like if they hand trap us, we summon out Druid Swarm afterwards. Like let's say it's Nib. Druid Swarm plus token is Lina. Druid Swarm can pop the Nib, and then we have 3 spells in graveyard. So Lina bring back the Nib. Lina plus Nib into Selene. Selene into Appaloosa. So even if they have Nib right here, we still can Appaloosa them. Like clear the Nib, Appaloosa, set woes and perm. Which is, yeah, kind of crazy. But, yeah, kind of crazy actually. But make this play. Go Diabel. Diabel effect, add back the Tails. Special Rusia. Rusia effect, discard the woes. We're going to shuffle again. I don't remember if I did before or after going into the deck last time. Draw into our own Nib. Woes to reset. And if we wanted to, we could go into Chaos Angel here, which might be a little bit of a waste because you're not getting the banish effect, but you are protecting your sinkers from monster effects, which if you're playing against a deck like Snake Eye, they cannot deal with your board without monster effects. Like there's actually no way for them to do it outside of hard drawing the Imperm, which we already crossed out, so they would have to have a second Imperm, or droplets, which may or may not be in their main or side deck. So a lot of decks just actually cannot deal with Chaos Angel, and Chaos Angel plus this is even better. Like you just win. And then you know, on top of that, you think that we've got the woes, we've got the Imperm, and then we have Druid Swarm, Nib in hand. So lots of disruption through 2 hand traps. And you could have also just left the Lacrima on board. That's also the other thing. So we could have left Lacrima on board and still gotten to like let's see, we could still was it, oh, it was Valor. Yeah, there's a Valor in their graveyard, so we could have gone same thing, Lina. Yeah, let's actually do that instead. Those 2 into Lina, bring back the Valor into Selene, into Appaloosa. Yeah, what? Completely forgot about that. So that's through Ash plus Valor. You still end on Diabel, Appaloosa, Imperm, Woes, Nib, Druid Swarm, Tails in hand. Then the graveyard is completely set up with, again, Rusia plus Sylvie plus a Synchro. You've got a Astellar Engrave, Elzette Engrave. Like, this is everything. We have everything through 2 hand traps. This deck is good. This is a good deck. Man, I've been trying to tell people. This deck is actually insane. My only problem is me. Gosh, taking this exact same list basically to 2 regionals, and both times I've lost final round at a relatively high table. Like I'll misplay and lose a match like early, and then something stupid will happen in the middle of the tournament, and then final round I lose, and that's the day. That's happened 2 weeks in a row. So yeah, but as you guys can see, the deck can play through 2 hand traps. Could have played through 3. Could have kept going. But let's do this again. cut, and all right. So we've got Ash, Nib, Unicorn, Crossout, and Planet. And so with this hand, obviously it's just 2 bodies into Fiendsmith line. We've got the Crossout for whatever they might have. For going second, we have Nib plus Ash. 6 card will be Tract, which is actually really, really powerful going second. So going second, we'd have double hand trap for them, and then very good plays for us, even if the opponent can stop us. The Kashtira cards on their own are just so efficient and so powerful that you can win games just like this. Like Unicorn plus Fenrir beat down with hand traps is just honestly good enough in a lot of cases. So the way we would start this would be special summon the Unicorn, then Unicorn effect. So this will play around Droll, because if we start with Planet and they Droll us, then we don't even get Birth. But if we do this, at least we have Birth. So Unicorn for Birth, activate Planet, and obviously we do have the cross out, but I would rather not cross out a Droll. Like if the opponent has Droll plus Ash, Droll plus Nib, Droll plus anything else, I'd rather play through the Droll, because once you get to the Fiendsmith line, you don't really need to, like, Droll is fine. So if they were to like Droll us on searching Birth, we could always just normal summon Ash, play with Fiendsmith cards, and then have the cross out for whatever else they have. So like Droll is completely fine, which is I think why people are starting to cut Droll out of their decks, because it's very easy to play through, because your opponent's still getting that first search. In some decks, for a lot of decks, that's all you need. You can play with that one search. But yep, activate Birth, normal summon out the Fenrir. Wait, whoa. Do they have hand traps? I almost forgot. Almost forgot. Okay, let's actually see if they do have the Droll. Why am I talking about it? Let's see. So we'll roll the first dice. So we'll take it back. Let's walk it back a bit. We'll start with just the Unicorn, right? And yeah, Planet was in hand. So first dice, again, 1 Ash, 2 Nib, 3 Imperm. So 3, they have an Imperm. Would the opponent Imperm? Special summon Unicorn, activate the effect. That's the question. So this, I think, would depend a lot on when and who you're playing. So does the opponent know that we're on White Forest? Or do they think that this is just a Kashtira deck? Like if this is random event round 1 or 2, the opponent has like early rounds, so nobody just like scoped you out or anything. Nobody knows what you're on. Special Unicorn, activate the effect. If they think you're on Kashtira, they might Imperm this, because they're not going to want you to get a Birth. They're not going to want you to get the Theosis, anything like that. And you still obviously could have Shifter in hand. So they might Imperm this. But if it's a later round, or maybe a game 2 or 3 where the opponent knows what you're playing and they have an Imperm, they might not, because Imperm for one doesn't interact with this. It's not going to trigger the effect, so they can Imperm you at an impactful point and not have to deal with this ripping their extra deck later. So it's actually very dependent on when it occurs. Now for you, if they do Imperm it, again, we wouldn't have to stop it, because we can still just normal summon Ash Blossom in play and then have the cross out for the second hand trap. That would actually be completely fine. But let's see. How do we want to do this in this case? I guess since this is like late into the video, we'll say it's late into the event. The opponent knows what you're on. They're not going to Imperm the Unicorn because they know you're on White Forest. And it's all they have, because yeah, we only rolled the one. So they got the one hand trap, it's the Imperm. They're not Imperming this because they know what we're on. So Unicorn effect, get Birth, activate the Planet, Unicorn, or Fenrir, normal to Fenrir. Both of these into Moon, Moon into Requiem, Requiem into Engraver. Now we activate Birth effect, bring back either of our monsters, and then this goes into our copy of Sequence. So now we're going to activate Sequence effect. Our graveyard, we've got our 3 light fiends, and now the opponent is going to use that Imperm because they can't let this resolve. Obviously, they would have the choice of like letting us go Appaloosa and then holding it for something else, but I think this is this will be a pretty good Imperm. Granted, we do still have, you know, a live Engraver and Graveyard, but this would be a pretty solid imperm. In which case, if they did, and again, this would be solid because we've already used Sequence effect on field, we've already used Requiem's effect on field, so we would just have like a live Engraver and then both of their Graveyard effects, which isn't horrible, but it's like not much your opponent can, most decks can do with that anyways. So yeah, this gets impermed, in which case we would have to cross that out, because if they were to imperm here, we've already normal summoned, we've already used Birth, and yeah, we'd only have the Engraver left, which would not be good. Yeah, that wouldn't be good at all, actually. I don't know what we would do with that afterwards. So they imperm, we cross it out. Cross out for the imperm. And then we will shuffle back Moon and Requiem. Go Lacrima. Lacrima revive the Engraver. And the tricky thing here is that we don't have any spells or traps in hand to discard for Barricade Blocker effect, so we don't want to make the Beatrice play and then like dump in a Stellar. That would not be ideal. Now, we could have kept the Birth in hand, but you know, it's better to use the Birth where we used it. So I think what we want to do here is just to try to go for some efficiency. So I wouldn't want to make, or I guess what we could do is, we could just make Appaloosa, and like kind of prey on Appaloosa. Next turn we've got the Birth, and then we know the opponent is like down a card, plus we have 2 hand traps. That wouldn't be horrible. We could also go for like M7, add back Engraver, go for Lurrie, and then yeah, I think we just go for Appaloosa here. Yeah, just Appaloosa. Maybe I'm tripping, but I would feel pretty confident with Appaloosa with 3 materials, plus Ash plus Nib, being able to stop most decks. And then on the crackback, we've got, you know, Birth, Engraver, we have plays. So I feel like that would be fine. For turn, we would draw into a Stellar. Yeah, that's actually fine. That would be the safest play. The other thing I was thinking was maybe to go into a Desiree, because Desiree is just like a solid card to have on your board. Equip it with the sequence so it can't be targeted. And then you kind of have the same thing, like you have Desiree, Ash, Nib. But the downside there is that you don't have the Engraver to follow up with, which is what I really, really want. Like, I really want to just like grind and be efficient. I feel like that wins you a lot of games. So this will probably be how I play this out. Just end on the Appaloosa, Ash, Nib in hand, pretty good. And so yeah, that's the play. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 disruptions. One more cut, and then let's see. We've got Purge, Fenrir, Astellar, and Valor. So going first, we have either a Stellar plus Spell or Trap, but we also have 2 bodies. Going second, we have Purge plus Valor to stop our opponent, plus a Fenrir, which is a strong going second card. 6th card will be Engraver, which is an excellent top deck at any point in the game. But going first, what I would do is just start by special summon Fenrir, activate Fenrir effect, and same thing as before. How your opponent responds to this would depend on like it would depend on like where in the tournament you are, if they know what you're playing. And so the tricky thing here is that if your opponent's on Droll and Lockbird, searching Unicorn doesn't do anything really, but it could bait out Ash and Perm Valor. But at the same time, it plays into Droll. Whereas if you started with like a Stellar discard Purge, you could get to Sylvie search, and then you could play around Droll and still have Engine. Versus if you do this, you don't even really get the Engine. So that's sort of the downside here. Also, if this is like a game 2 or 3 and the opponent has like more Charmy, this is a lot of summons from the hand. That's something to note as well. But so activate Fenrir, summon Fenrir, activate the effect. We're gonna roll our dice. Again, 1 Ash, 2 Nib, 3 Imperm. So once again, Imperm. The opponent is probably not Imperming this. So Fenrir for Unicorn. Now from here we will normal summon our Stellar. Stellar effects in the Purge. And now this is the tricky part. Does the opponent Imperm the Astellar, or or do they wait? If they imperm the Astellar, then we still have 2 bodies in the Fiendsmith, which is like completely fine. Or if they don't, we have this whole play and they just imperm something later. I would say most people imperm now, actually, yeah. Probably don't let Astellar resolve. So then from here, so this is impermed, and then from here we just have 2 bodies. So we go 2 bodies into Moon, Moon into Requiem, Requiem into Engraver. Now the other cool thing I like about this is if they had Ash and they were to Ash the Requiem, which would be completely valid. We've already normal summoned, we've already special summoned, but I guess they do know we have Unicorn in hand, so that would be something that they consider for sure. But if they were to Ash the Requiem, you could just summon out the Unicorn, search Birth, and that would be a nice little punish there. But maybe because they know they have Unicorn, they don't use the Ash here. But I guess the question then is, at what point now do they Ash us? You know? So maybe they just hold it for like next turn. But we get to Engraver. Then we can equip the Requiem. Contact Fuse into Necroquip. Activate the Engraver effect. Shuffle back Moon. Summon out the Engraver. And then overlay both of these into M7. And the reason we're going to do the M7 line is if we go straight into sequence, the only light fiends would have our Engraver plus Requiem, and 2 is not enough for our play. So we got to get to 3. So M7 effect, detach Engraver, add Engraver, activate Engraver, search for Tract. Tract is going to search and discard Lurrie once I find the Tract. And now Lurrie and M7 can go into sequence. The other thing I like about M7 is in simple game states, it has good stats and you can add cards back. So like you could add back, Astellar if you needed it next turn, or you could add back Fenrir for next turn. Or if we Valor them and it stays on board, M7 stays on board, we could add back the Valor. Like it's actually really good in simple game states. But here we go for sequence. And once again, we've already normal summoned, we don't have any spells or traps, so we're not going to make like a Beatrice line. In a hand like this, you could just try to carry yourself with Fiendsmith and Kashtira cards. That's like the path. Unfortunately, we only have the 1 hand trap, so we have to think like how we want to use our Fiendsmith cards to get the most interruptions. So we could go for Desiree here, or we could go for like a big Appaloosa. So it's kind of just up to you depending on the matchup, what you know about your opponent's deck. But both of those would be valid. So you'd either have Desiree plus Valor, or you would have Appaloosa plus Valor. Desiree might be better, so you have like some spell or trap negation on top of the Valor for monster negation. It'd be a little harder for your opponent to disrupt, and if they can out the Desiree, you would get that graveyard effect for removal as well. And so if I were to do it that way, I would shuffle back the Lurrie and the Requiem. And again, we're going into Desiree. Well, later we're going into Desiree. But summon out the Lacrima effect or Engraver, and then you use the Tract effect to fuse for the Desiree, because Desiree is Engraver plus 2 light fiends. So summon out Desiree, and then effect of sequence to equip. So I like the Tract play to do it versus just summoning it outright, because it leaves multiple light fiends in your graveyard. So again, you have a stronger follow-up next turn. And then the other thing is with Astellar and graveyard, right? So again, this isn't the strongest inboard by any means. You have Desiree plus Valor, not the strongest inboard. But assuming you do survive, and assuming you survive, right, yeah. Let's say they clear your board, you use the Valor, and you decide to use Desiree effect, shuffle back the sequence, to send the card on your opponent's side of the field to the graveyard. Then it's your turn. Next turn we draw... Did I shuffle? I don't think I shuffled after shuffling back the Lurrie. I don't think I actually shuffled. So next turn you draw Planet. That's fine. Doesn't matter if it's a brick. Next turn what you could do is summon out Engraver by shuffling back the Desiree. Equip sequence. I guess we summon out Unicorn too, by the way. Yeah, I guess the first thing we do is Unicorn and get Birth. I got ahead of myself. I was trying to think like worst case scenario, show you guys what you can do with this, but like we do have the unicorn if they do clear the board, and that's kind of the tricky thing. If they don't clear the board, you can't do this. If they do clear the board, you summon out the unicorn, search birth. But the main thing about this, and one of the synergies I like about the Fiendsmith engine with White Forest stuff, is if the opponent has a monster on board, you activate Engraver's effect, send sequence to the graveyard to send their monster, but now that triggers the Astellar effect. So now Astellar can come back, and now you've got access to your engine again. So now we can like use Astellar, send the planet or the birth that we could have gotten off the unicorn, get to Sylvie search, and like now we're playing. So the first end board that we ended on was not insane, you know, Valor, Desiree, not the best, but next turn you're like playing. So that's one thing I like about this deck a lot. Also, if we didn't want to use the graveyard effect of Astellar, we could have also just normal summoned it and sent it, but still, same thing though. Like, you're playing on turn 2 if you don't get like killed. That's one of the other synergies about this deck, and why I try to always keep my Fiendsmith cards in rotation for the follow-up, because you can use them for White Forest stuff like very easily. But that's the play through a single imperm. Now let's see if the opponent's gonna have 2 hand traps in this next hand. We've had a couple of single imperms, which is, you know, that's easy to play through. You can easily play through 1 hand trap. So let's see if the opponent gets 2 in this hand. Stellar, called by, Nib, Tails, and Engraver. So going first, Astellar plus Engraver plus called by plus Tails is pretty solid. I would rather Tails be kind of something else though, just because this doesn't really do anything. We have access to spells through Engraver anyways. And then I guess also Engraver plus called by can play through multiple hand traps as well. So this is, even if the opponent has multiple hand traps, this is actually really good, because this is just like Appaloosa. And then this can stop anything that's not Nib or Imperm. And then this is just like super combo, but we'll play it out. But you guys can see how it would go. So start with the first die. So okay, yes, 6. So they're gonna have 2 hand traps. So let's do Ash, Nib, Imperm, and then Ash, Nib, Imperm, Valor. So Imperm plus Valor. Alright, so we're going to start with Engraver because we want to play around hand traps. So this would test for like Droll here. So search Tract, anything on res, they say no, so no Droll, activate Tract. Kind of in a way test for Ash too, but probably not. You still got to be worried about it. But search, discard Lurrie, summon Lurrie into Requiem, and then Requiem effect. So this actually tests for Ash. For Engraver. Okay. So we know they don't have Ash at this point. Now from here, Engraver effect, shuffle back the Lurrie. Bring out the Engraver. Both of these into Sequentia. We've got the 3 Light Fiends in graveyard, so we're good to go for Nib, or good to go for Lacrima, and then into Appaloosa to protect us from Nib. So activate Sequence Effect. On Sequence Effect, they probably imperm it just because it's better around like Talents, Called By, anything like that. So they probably imperm that, which we can't do anything about. So they imperm the sequence, that's fine. We've already used Engraver effect, which is unfortunate. So from here, the only play that we'd really have is to go for Astellar, normal summon Astellar, activate Astellar effect, sending the Tails, and now it's like the opponent is going to imperm this, for sure, but even if they impermed it, this would get reset, we could go for Lucia and then continue like that. Which is actually maybe what you do. Like, I think I would maybe let this get Valored, just because, like, I mean, no, maybe you don't. Yeah, I don't think you play around the 3rd hand trap. I think you definitely stop it if you can. It's just one of those things to where, like, you don't have to stop it, and you could save this for interaction on the opponent's turn. Like, this can negate an Engraver. This could This could stop an Ash Blossom, or not Ash Blossom, but like Snake Eye Ash. And there's so many things that this could stop on the opponent's turn. Like, this is actually a solid defensive card this format. But yeah, I don't think you like... Yeah, I think you stop that though. Yeah. So, Called by the Grave on the Ash Block, or on the Veiler. Go for Sylvie. So then, new chain, we can do Sylvie 1, Tails 2, Tails to set, Sylvie to search for woes. But yeah, the play is just so much better like this. Then these into Arceella effect. We already have access to Tails and woes, so here we can just go for a Veiler, or we can go for Elzette if we wanted to just like save the Tails effect. It would depend if we want to add anything back with Diabell. So we could add back the Called By, or we can add back, I guess we don't need to add back Tract. So I guess it would be really the choice between if we want Veiler or if we want Called By. Veiler's probably better. So yeah, search for the copy of Effect Veiler, and then new chain, Astellar 1, woes 2, so woes to reset, Astellar summon back, then go into, oh wait, whoa, hold on. Before we synchro, I almost forgot. We're going for Tails. Going for Tails. And go for Diabell. And actually, in retrospect, maybe there's a better way to do this. Yeah, I think there is a better way to do this. So instead of going for Elzette off of the Tails, I think maybe we just go for Rucia. Yeah. Yeah, I think we just go for Rucia. And then... So that's... Well, let's go back a bit, yeah. So we're here, Tails for Rucia. I think what we do here is we just summon out the Rucia. And then we go... Celine. And we've got 3 Engrave. So... Celine, add counters, lose counters, then go into Appaloosa, and then we add back the Tails. So if we add back the Tails first, then we wouldn't have 3 spells in graveyard, but if we do it this way, we still do. So then, through Imperm Veiler, we end with Appaloosa, Diabell, woes. So we have Appaloosa for 2, double Book of Eclipse, we have Nib plus Veiler, Tails for efficiency, and then in the graveyard we have Rucia plus Sylvie plus a Synchro that we can use. We have Astellar for its graveyard effect. We have live Engravers. Woes can summon out Elzette, so Elzette's going to be in our hand next turn as well. So we have effectively full access to both of our major engines in the deck. So very strong hand, very strong board through double hand trap, which is why, once again, this format is crazy because you really need 3 to guarantee that you're stopping your opponent. Granted, we did have Called By, but again, even if like Called By wouldn't have stopped us, Called By would maybe just like change the inboard a little bit. Like maybe we don't have Appo, but it still would have been fine because we have Tails. So Tails would still get us to like the Rucia, which could still get us to Arceella, which would still get us to like, you know what I mean? Like we're still playing through anything else. The only other hand trap that could have hurt is if like the third one is like a Nib, because we have no way to stop the Nib. But even if it was, nah, Nib would hurt. Nib would hurt because yeah, we already used Engraver and our normal summon. But all right, let's do another hand. Ash, Astellar, Ash, Birth, and oof, double Ash, double Astellar, Birth. That's rough. So one hand trap if we were going second, 6th card would be Engraver once again, and always good top deck, but unfortunately we're going first with this hand, and we've only got one play, which is to normal summon Astellar and then send the Birth to graveyard, and hopefully the opponent, they're gonna have a hand trap, so hopefully it's not one that can stop this. So let's roll our dice. 3. So Ash, Nib, Imperm. I think you Imperm this, and then we pass turn with just an Ash in hand. So we probably lose that game. This is probably an L. It's almost definitely an L. But yeah, that is unfortunate. But that's the way it goes. That's the format. I mentioned earlier that this deck doesn't really brick, and it doesn't. But it's consistent enough to not brick. But sometimes you do just get hand trapped and lose. That's just part of the game. That's why I wanted to show you guys, you know, this part of the video. I want to show you guys how it plays through hand traps. Like, in an ideal world, that's full combo. Astellar plus any Speller Trap is full combo. I think I literally showed in the deck profile Astellar plus Birth, actually. But things don't always go like that in the real world, so hey, that's the way it goes. See, Elzette, Astellar, Tract, Planet, and Birth. You know, going second, this would be rough because we have no hand traps. But even going second, 6 card would be, okay, useless Purge in that case. But we would still have, like, normal summon in play, special summon in play, extend, like, normal summon in play, 2 extenders, 3 extenders, like, 4 extenders. This is like normal summon in all. This is all gas. This is all gas, actually. So this would maybe be fine, actually. Going first, though. So the main thing you'd want to think about, in my opinion, would be Droll and Lockbird. But the thing with playing around Droll with this hand is, like, we've got Tract, we've got Planet, like, it's tricky. Because ideally, you search for Unicorn, you summon out Unicorn, and then if the opponent has a hand trap, you can rip their extra deck, and that would be, you know, kind of a bit of a trade-off. And then you still have many more plays to make afterwards. The downside is if they have Droll, however, you know, you search Unicorn, and then you can't even resolve Unicorn, really. You're not really doing much of anything outside of, like, 2 bodies in the Fiendsmith line, which is not horrible, but it's not really great either. But I think you take that risk. I think people are starting to move away from Droll, so I think the risk is worth, the reward outweighs the risk, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So you will activate Planet, and Planet can go for our Unicorn. Actually, I think you go for Fenrir here, and you try to test for, like, some other hand trap. Because, like, we can't use Unicorn, but if we summon Fenrir and use the effect, maybe we can get the opponent to use a, like an Imperm or a Veiler on it. Actually, wait, whoa, we need to test for Droll. Yeah, let's test for Droll first, but that's what I would go for. Like, I'm thinking, okay, they probably don't have Droll, but if they, I'm thinking they probably don't have Droll. We can use the Fenrir to test for other things, and then we still could, like, summon out whatever we search with it too. We could summon out the Unicorn if we want later. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But let's see if they actually have the Droll. So, roll our dice. 1. So what they have is Ash. Man, I'm rolling. I feel like when I thought about this beforehand, I thought, you know, 50% chance of rolling greater than 3. So 50% chance of them having 2 hand traps. But most of these hands, I think they've only had 1. So we're going to just spice this up anyways, because our hand is, like, absurd. We're giving them a second hand trap. So they've got Ash. What's the second hand trap? Can you guys see that, or did it just roll off screen? 2. So it's Ash Nib. So they don't have the Droll. And this, I would say, definitely goes through. They're not ashing this. It's just too early. Doesn't really do anything yet. Fenrir effect. Fenrir for Unicorn. It's like, at this point too, who knows what we're playing. If it's early in the event, they might not know what we're playing. They might think this is straight up Kashtira, in which case you don't ash that either. So regardless of what they think we're on, you're not using ash yet. So that's how that goes. Now we can try to use the Fiendsmith line to protect our White Forest lines. So activate Tract. So Tract. We know they don't have Droll, by the way. We don't know about anything else. So Tract, add Lurrie, discard Lurrie, Lurrie effect. They're gonna let that go through most likely. They could have ashed the Tract, but I think you're gonna usually try to hold that for Requiem. I think that's usually the play. So Lurrie comes back. That tells us that they don't have a Bestial, because we already have a monster on board. The Bestial would be a quick effect. So then from here, we go into Requiem. Requiem effect. So this is when the Ash Blossom, that actually does hurt quite a bit because we don't have access to Engraver now. But we have gotten the Ash Blossom out of the way. From here, we could do Elzette plus 2 Speller Traps, or we could do Astellar plus 1. And now let's see. Yeah, I think that's the play, yeah. We could use Birth, summon out the Unicorn, but that's just 2 bodies, but we've already summoned Requiem, which you can't summon again. So yeah, I think the better place is just to go with Astellar. If they do have something, we still have the Elzette for follow-up. So summon out the Astellar effect, send the planet. And actually, if they have Nib, do they Nib right here? How many times have we summoned? 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 summons, so Nib's not live yet. But it will be live on this next play. So Sylvie. So because of that, we want to search the woes. That way you at least get access to woes. Now, knowing that this is a White Forest list, if you were to Nib here, right? So they don't know that we have Elzette or Birth in hand. But they do know we have Unicorn, they do know we have woes. This isn't a play. I think if I were the opponent, I would Nib right here. Because this means they're not getting to a Synchro Summon, so Sylvie won't be turned on. They might not be able to use Astellar's Graveyard effect either. So I think this is definitely a Nib moment. And then the sleeve can be token. So that's token. We still have Birth, Elzette, plus Unicorn in hand, and they have Nibiru. We do not have a way to Engraver yet. So we do want to out the Nibiru as well because you don't want to leave the opponent with a body on board. That's like the dumbest thing about this form, or one of the dumbest things about this format. Like leaving Nib is so strong because not only does it clear the opponent's board, but if they keep the body, it becomes a moon and it becomes Fiendsmith engine. So it's like you have to clear bodies off of the board. So I think what we do here is we activate Elzette effect, sending the planet. We've already normal summoned, so what we'll do instead is go for Rucia. And special summon the Rucia. You could use Rucia's effect to discard the woes and draw. But we definitely want to use Arciella's effect. We definitely want to use that because that can get us to like probably Tails. Tails is probably the best thing to get to. We could go for Veiler just to guarantee some more disruption. But we've already got the woes, so I think that would maybe be fine. But I also really want to deal with like Nib token or Nibiru. Yeah, I don't think we need to use Arceus effect because it's like, what are we doing with that? I don't know. So, yeah. This can go into Arciella effect. Let's go. Actually, maybe we should have. What would we have drawn? We would have drawn a cross out. Maybe this is maybe the line. I'm not super happy about it, but I think it is the line, unfortunately. Let's see. So then we've got Astellar and then Woes effect. I'm still thinking how I want to deal with like that Nibiru. In terms of like a way to get rid of it. How could we get rid of it? We've already normal summoned, we've already used Rucia's effect to summon. There's no removal in the main deck, the only removal in the extra deck would be Chaos Angel, M7, or yeah, that's the only removal in the extra deck. The only main deck removal is Engraver. M7 could bounce it back to hand and then we could just play around it. Chaos Angel could banish it and we'd have Chaos Angel. But getting to Chaos Angel is actually tough here because we don't have another... We don't have a way to get to another level 4 for this. And if we did it from earlier, we would need... Like, the levels just don't add up very well here. guess is what I'm saying. Because we've already used all of our summons. So we could have just used... Yeah, we've already used Elzette. Yeah, I guess Diabell doesn't really get us anything either. I guess is another issue. We can't go Moon into Requiem because Requiem can only be summoned once per turn. I guess, yeah, we just have to, like, set up a Silvera and, yeah. Yeah, I guess that's kind of all we can do. Let's see. Yeah, that kind of is all we can do, yeah. So we can maybe use Tails. No, yeah, using Tails here is, like, bad. Alright, yeah. We just go Diabell. This is actually unfortunate, but not horrible. There are worse plays to make. We can go Diabell. Diabell can add back the Tract, which we can use on next turn to get to Engraver. And at least we already have like some Light Fiends engrave. And then we can play the Birth, revive the Fenrir. And now for our opponent's turn. So this was through double hand trap. We still have Diabell, Woes, Fenrir. So we have Fenrir for disruption. We have the Diabell for disruption. We still have the double Silvera play. So like they do something, we could like Diabell, send Tails, summon out Silvera, and then book their board. And this could also like, they'll always have the token. Tokens can't be face down, but this at least could deal with whatever they summon. That could link off, or not, no, they have Nib, yeah, we have the token, I'm tripping. But they get flip summon the Nib, I guess is what I'm saying. So they're always gonna have like a face up monster anyways. But I guess you can't flip summon it twice. So we summon out Silvera, book their board, and then later on we activate the Tails, Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2, like let's say Rusia. Bounce back the Silvera, summon out Rusia. Woes will summon out Elzette. Go into Silvera again to book their board again. Elzette effect to add back. And then we still have like the Fenrir effect. We've had 2 books, Fenrir, we've got Birth, if that's useful depending on the matchup. And then we still have like a bunch of stuff engraved to use as well. So we still have, oh wait, Tail should be reset by the way. But we still have like a Astellar engrave, we still have Arciella and Sylvie engrave. And again, we've got a couple of Light Fiends. So through double hand trap, not the best board, but certainly pretty solid board. But again, that's real. Like you get hand trapped a couple times, you can do your ideal play, but you at least can do a half play. And as you guys see, the half plays are pretty solid in this deck. Especially when you're able to like keep your Kashtira cards live, which is one of the things I like about them. They're so good. They're so good when you get hand trapped a couple of times. Like as you saw there, like that extra Fenrir is more disruption on the opponent's turn. And so is the Birth. Like that's extra disruption and follow up. Like they serve multiple roles, which is exactly what you want out of your side engines. It's like when you're playing the, let's say the Centurion cards, like they are just extenders kind of. They're more engine requirements than extenders, I would say, to be honest, but like they just make your plays better, but they don't account for real games where you're getting multiple hand traps and you're not really doing your full combo. What do they do then? Whereas for the Kashtira cards, they are, you know, extenders, they're disruption, they're follow-up, like they're everything. I think the runic cards are similar as well because the runic cards can be disruption, they can be removal, they can summon out, you can summon out like Hugin, search your field spell for more efficiency plays or help you draw into other cards. So I want to try out a runic build too for sure. I think the runics work very well with White Forest. So that might be my next venture with this deck. So let's see, we've got Elzette, Stellar, Nib, Imperm, and Elzette. Not an ideal hand. Going second, Nib, Imperm is solid. And then 6-card Tails would be actually pretty good here. Like we just need spells or traps with this hand. This is a good spell or trap to have. It's efficient. But going first, honestly, the only play is, as risky as it is normal summon a Stellar and discard imperm. If the opponent has anything, maybe you just pass here, actually. Maybe you just pass, because I don't think you get killed through Nib imperm. You could set monster, set imperm, and have Nib in hand. That would not be horrible. Or you could maybe go Elzette. Like Elzette into Rusia, and then normal summon the Astellar. No, but then you don't have a spell or trap, so you definitely want to get Sylvie as your normal summon. But then you wouldn't have... Yeah, that's not very good either. Yeah, so I think it's just Astellar, discard, imperm, and then, like, if the opponent has a hand trap. So let's see. Basically anything stops this, unless you... Yeah, basically anything stops this, but... 3, let's see, so... Ash, Nib, imperm, they imperm this, game's over. Yep, scoop it up, save time. Alright. Ash, Astellar, Nib, Elzette. Dang, I just realized the same hand. This, alright. This is an actual brick. 6 card. Ooh, that's horrible. Yeah, did I? Man, I'm not good at shuffling. That's crazy. That's like actually crazy. Alright, let's do one more hand. If this is the same hand, I'm going to lose it. Okay, a little bit different here. Dang, Ash Nib though? Alright, weird hand for sure. If we're going... So going first, weird hand. Going second, we have Ash plus Nib once again. And then 6 card would be Planet, which is a pretty solid 6 card to have. But going first, we would have to start with just Engraver. Like, that's basically the only effect we have. We could go like Rusia discard, but like that's our normal summon, which, you know, is probably not worth it. So Engraver effect, here we want to check for like potentially Ash Blossom, maybe Droll. So let's see what they've got. That is a 6, so we're going to re-roll. So we've got 2 and 4, so we've got Ash Nib, Imperm, Valor. So they have Nib plus Valor, which is pretty good actually. Pretty good, but we don't know that. We just know that they don't have Droll here, so, or maybe Ash. So Engraver effect, we search for Tract. Anything on res, they say no, we activate. So we know they don't have Droll now. Activate Tract, add Lurrie, discard Lurrie, summon Lurrie. Then from here, let's see, where is it? Go Requiem effect. Any response to Requiem, they say no, so we know they don't have Ash, we know they don't have Droll. Now we have Engraver on board. So we know they don't have Ash, we know they don't have Droll. Here we activate the Engraver effect. Put back the Lurrie. No response, we know they don't have Bestial. Both of these into Sequentia. So now we're going to activate Sequentia effect. We've got our 3 in graveyard. So this part's tricky. So they could just negate this with a Valor, or they could let us summon out and then nib us. We have Tract in graveyard, but we have already used Engraver's effect. I don't know if you guys can hear, there's like a fire truck outside, which is crazy because there's a tropical storm going on as well. So it's like, how's there a fire in a tropical storm? I don't know. But yeah, if it was me with Imperm Nib, or sorry, Valor Nib, I think I would rather, I would Nib. I would let them summon out with Lacrima than Nib. That way you've at least wasted their Lacrima effect, and then you've gotten 2 more fiends into like the deck. But I guess they still have another fiend anyways. But like, yeah, that's what I think I would do. And then also it gets all the fiends off the board. Yeah. So. But let me know if you would do something different in that case. It's weird playing against, like, you know, these hand traps not knowing. But we summon out this, and then they nib us. And then we're stuck with, this is our graveyard. Sequence, Lacrima, Engraver, Engrave, Tract, Engrave. We've already used Engraver's graveyard effect, so this is all dead in graveyard. There wasn't really much we could do to play around it either, because the hand isn't, like, super strong. The only other thing that we could have done was, instead of, we could have made it to where instead of using the Engraver effect to summon out, we could have just normal summoned Rusia. And then used Rusia's effect and then made sequence with Engraver plus Engraver plus Rusia. That was an option. But I think usually I'd rather, like, save my normal summon if I can. Because I think ideally the way this plays out is, like, we go like Barricade Ward Blocker, Beatrice, dump Astellar, and then bring back the Astellar, discard the Birth for Astellar. Or I guess we discard the Birth for the Barricade Ward Blocker, which brings back the Astellar, which I guess... Yeah, we need another spell trap for that anyway, so... Yeah, I think we just played that wrong. Yeah, we just played that badly. So we're going to go back, actually. Just for better testing's sake. So... Because, like, in this case, we get nibbed here. We can't really do anything. All we can do is, like, summon Rusia, use the effect, discard Birth, and draw Engraver, which is not good. And then... this plus nib token doesn't do anything either. Whereas if we did it the other way around, we could at least save the Engraver. Yeah, we played this pretty badly. So let's go back, actually. We'll put Sequence Lacrima back. Requiem. This is what makes, this is how you should be testing. Like, there's no point in, like, making mistakes in testing and then, like, just rolling with it. Like, you should just play for the optimal line so that you can see how this works optimally, and then when you're actually playing, you should make the optimal play. Oh yeah, we have another Engraver. There we go. Engraver. So yeah, sorry about that, guys. We're gonna go back. I just realized, like, we definitely could have played that better. Because this saves the Engraver effect. So then from here, I believe this is where we were at. Yeah, because we used Engraver, shuffle back Lurrie, and then that was, yeah. So then from here, we can normal summon Lurrie. And again, the opponent has Valor plus Nib. We don't know that, though. We're playing blind. But, like, for your guys' sake, for this sake, it's that. So, yeah. So here, we summon out Rusia. Activate Rusia's effect, because this doesn't do anything right now. The only time where this would do something is if we made Beatrice and dumped the Kashtira monster, which is, like, weird. But, I mean, you could do it, but, like... which actually maybe wouldn't be horrible. Because it's, like... it at least would get us 2 Kashtira engine. And we don't have enough spells and traps to get to, like, White Forest, like full White Forest play. So maybe, hey, maybe we do that. Let me know if you guys would make the play of Rusia effect. I mean, let's just... see what we would draw. Like, okay, maybe we draw a Valor, maybe we draw a hand trap. Maybe you run the risk reward in your head to where we're like, all right, we play, I think in this list there are 17 hand traps. We drew 2, so 15 hand traps and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 43 minus 9 is 34. Wait, what? Am I tripping? Not 34. Yeah, no, it is 34. So we have 34 cards in deck, 15 hand traps minus 2. 17 hand traps minus 2 is 15, so 34 cards in deck, 15 hand traps. We could draw into more defense. We've already normal summoned, so we don't want to draw into, like, Astellar, Elzette. We don't want to draw into any White Forest cards, basically. Is it worth it? It's maybe not worth it, actually, yes. Maybe we just don't use that effect. But then from here, we go into sequence. Same thing. We shuffle back 2. We shuffle back, like, let's say Lurrie and Engraver, actually. That way we still have 2 equips in the grave. So shuffle back Lurrie and Engraver. Then we go Lacrima. Lacrima revive the Engraver. Then they nib us. Okay, fine. We get token. But now at least we can go Engraver effect. Shuffle back the Lacrima. Summon out the Engraver, probably in defense. And then equip. Sequence effect to equip. And here, maybe this is when the opponent... They could Veiler us here. Because once sequence is equipped, the Engraver can't be targeted. Or I guess it would send it for cost and you can still Veiler it. Actually, yeah, so... Equip the sequence, Engraver effect, to try to destroy the... Or send the nib to the graveyard. That way you're getting the body off the board at least. The opponent, depending on their hand, could Veiler that. Say they still have the body. Or they could let it go. That's kind of hard to say. But whether they do or not, this is pretty much where our play stops because we don't really have much to do afterwards. Like Birth doesn't do anything, and then we have Ash nib for the opponent. And then if we did send the nib to the graveyard, we could go Lina and revive the nib. And that's not horrible because at least Lina floats, and that could float into like any of your White Forest starter cards. But that, yeah, you still just have Ash nib. And then we maybe draw, like, who knows for turn next turn. So yeah, that's that play. All right, let's do one more. Astellar, Engraver, Druid's Worm, Imperm, Veiler. So going first, this would be a very good hand. Going second, we have 3 hand traps, and then 6 card. Oh my gosh, this is insane. So yeah, you know, some hands you just automatically win the game. Sometimes you just automatically win the game. So we'll play this out though. We'll start with Engraver. We've seen this combo before. Engraver generates the spells that we need for Astellar's effect. So activate Engraver. Again, if they have an Ash, I do think this is like not a horrible Ash. So let's just check for it. 5. So we'll reroll. So 1 Ash. This is Ash, Nib, Imperm, Veiler, Droll. So they have Ash Droll actually. Oh my god, I thought we won. We don't win anymore. Oh, we lose. We actually just lose. Okay, so we Engraver for Tract, and then they Droll us, and we're like, all right, that's fine. We normal summon Astellar. I'm using the Imperm, yeah. You want Tract for follow-up just in case, but whew, that's actually rough because if you keep the Imperm and you lose the Tract, then like you have no follow-up, but keeping this, at least you got something. And they do have something. So we activate Astellar, send Imperm, they Ash it, and this is when we are big sad. Now, worst case scenario, if we really wanted to, we could summon out the Bestial, banish the Engraver, and then make a play like that. So the 2 bodies is Fiendsmith stuff, or we could go straight into a Diabell and have Diabell plus Tract, and Diabell can get us to like something else, but this is obviously not ideal because it leaves us with just 1 hand trap, barely any follow-up. It's like something, but yeah. Ooh, that's a big think. That's a big think. Because you could just hold this and have both of these as disruption. So where does this go? 2 bodies, you can't search. We could go Moon, Requiem, Engraver. How do we get a second summon? We'd have to use Engraver's effect. But then, how do we get another Fiend? We'd have to use M7, but we can't use M7 to search. Yeah, we can't use Tract because we're in their Droll. So yeah, this actually goes nowhere. So I guess you would have to just pass on this, which is not horrible. Like, we got 2 cards at the opponent's hand. We've got 2 hand traps for them. Our next card, oh, that's horrible. Man, we went from auto winning to auto losing. That's crazy. But hey, if they've got it, they got it. If it was any hand trap aside from Droll, we'd be playing through it. But Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, this is gross. Yeah, equip. Man, the wind outside is crazy. Necro equip. Engraver shuffle back to the moon. Maybe this is just like big body M7. Beatrice doesn't really do anything here. Big body M7. Oh, we could actually just pass on Necroquip and get us a draw from using Valor effect, but big body M7, add back the Druid Swarm. So Valor, Druid Swarm, Tract. If the M7 survives next turn, we can add back the Astellar, which wouldn't be horrible, but this is horrible. This is not good. This is not good. But yeah, this is maybe what you would have to do in this case. Rough. That's Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's the end of this combo guide. So let me know what you guys think about the deck, and please, please, please let me know what you think about the plays, because I don't mind looking stupid on the internet, but help me correct my misplays so that I don't look stupid in real life too. If you have any other questions, comments, concerns, tips, tricks, or anything, let me know in the comment section down below. If you want to see the deck profile, it will be right here on the screen in the end cards as well as in the description. If you're looking for any other White Forest content and it's far enough into the future, it'll also be on the end screen. But until then, here's the most relevant video for you, and so definitely check that out too. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.